So basically, working for Chase Manhattan, learned how the international economy worked. It was not what I had learned in school getting my PhD. There was nothing there. The gunboats do not play a role in foreign trade theory or in international financial theory. Targeted assassinations do not play a role. But I learned very quickly that that's what it's all about. I was a liaison with similar economic research heads in other banks, and I was pleasantly surprised to find out that they were all Marxists. And we sat around one evening and said, why is this? And I said, well, obviously, who understands capitalism? Marx's book was called Capital. It's about capitalism, and we understand capitalism. If you go to business school and study academic economics, it's all public relations for how making other countries rich make you poor, how rent-seeking makes you rich, how billionaires make their income by helping society grow, not exploiting them. As Marxists, we knew what exploitation was all about. And business school says there's no such thing as exploitation. Well, if you don't know there's exploitation, how can you explain how the economy works? And how can you understand international diplomacy? Obviously, you can't. And I remember one evening we would meet in Sapporo Noodle Shop, a Japanese noodle shop, to discuss that week's news, financial news. One evening we were all discussing volume 3 of Capital. And I think I've said this in other places before. We just broke out laughing and say, imagine, here we are, the economists doing the research and all the nitty gritty for the big banks. And here we're all looking at volume 3 of Capital, which somehow was not taught in any of the economics courses that gave us the credentials that got us our job. So you need something besides academic credentials in order to know how the world works. And that's why the people who hired me after Wall Street was Herman Kahn at the Hudson Institute to advise the Defense Department and national security agencies and the White House on how imperialism worked. They actually needed Marxists to explain to them how imperialism worked, to use it as a how to do it book. And they stopped looking at Marx's writing and Lenin as a banned book. They said, well, this is really the how to do it book. Let's see how it works. Oh, now we understand what we're doing. We were just doing it intuitively. There's actually a science to imperialism. There's no question it's more important for China right now, because the question is, how are you going to keep your housing prices low? If China had let American banks come in, American banks would have lent more and more money to home buyers in China, and all of a sudden, the cost of owning a home in China would have involved huge mortgage payments to American banks that would have transferred all of this mortgage interest, back to the head offices, and China would have had a huge drain of financial debt service to the United States, while its housing costs went up and up and up so much that it would be pricing your labor out of world markets, and you'd end up priced out of the market. So rent is much the key to competition in China as it was to Ricardo in 1815 after the Napoleonic Wars, when the rent issue and the land issue became the most important issue in British politics throughout the entire 19th century. And classical economics basically was created on how to analyze rent as unearned income, and by extension, mineral rents and monopoly rents as an application of whether income is earned or unearned. And that became, Marx used this as the basis for his analysis of rent and finance in volumes 2 and 3 of Capital, and became the basis of Marx's treating of industrial capitalist profits as a kind of rent extraction of capital from labor. So the land issue became, you're right, that when I do get to that, that will be the key to the economic theory that I'm relying on. And what we're doing in these lectures is to describe the phenomenon of international exploitation and how it's mainly financial. And then we go over how this came into being, essentially by financializing economic rent, by democratizing land ownership on credit, and how the financial capitalism became an imperialistic dynamic that is what is threatening the world. It all comes from what began as rent grabbing in England 200 years ago. Well, as part of my oil study, we had to figure out how the American oil industry benefited from its affiliates in Europe. It's refineries that the American companies owned in Europe, the distribution companies, all of the gas stations with SO. SO meant Standard Oil, SO. So my job was to look at the American statistics. They thought that they'd hire a consultant to do the European studies. And that was Alan Greenspan. The study basically at Chase was funded by Standard Oil of New Jersey and Saccone, Standard Oil Company of New York. And it was Ciccone that wanted Alan Greenspan because they said, he always says what we want him to. My boss, John Deaver, who was head of the economic research department, said, I really want the study to be very good. I just don't trust Alan Greenspan because, as Ciccone said, he always says what they want. I'm sure there's a mistake somewhere. Find it out. I really want you to be the whole author of the study. So I spent a few days going over all of his figures, and I found one of the things that makes oil refineries tax exempt is depreciation. You're able to not only make a profit on your capital, when you invest, you're able to recapture the actual capital that you expense, that you write down. And the depreciation laws of Europe are very different from those in the United States that were written essentially to favor the real estate interest. So I found out that what Greenspan had done was just copy the US depreciation and assume that it was the same for Europe. I could tell that I did a chart, and charting it visually showed me the same. I was told, well, he's faked the figures, go and fire him. So I walked over, and Rockefeller and Deaver said, well, I can't fire him because then he's an Ayn Rand person. He's sort of filled with hatred. He'll badmouth, he'll attack me. I don't want to be attacked, but nobody's going to attack you because you're a nobody. You're only 25 years old. Nobody knows who you are. He wants to attack big people. We don't want to be attacked, so you go and tell him he's off the project. So I went over to his office, and he had two secretaries, Lucille Wu and someone else, and she said, it's all implicit, all implicit. I said, what do you mean? What does implicit mean? She said, well, we took the US figures and we implied that they were the European figures. And I said, no, I'm looking at the statistics. I'm not looking at a theory. She's all about theory. I said, no, I have to actually use the statistics. So I ended up using my own statistics. I got the statistics for the affiliates in Europe, used the correct numbers, and I quickly became known as the man who fired Alan Greenspan, so that David Rockefeller could say it wasn't me who fired him, it was Michael, found there was a mistake, and I got all the blame, or what later turned out, of course, to be the credit. So on the day that Greenspan left the Federal Reserve Board, the BBC interviewed me and had the quote of the day on its site, "After me, the deluge, Alan Greenspan." That was how I characterized him, and I got sort of notorious for that, and it didn't hurt my career one bit.